In this true crime documentary, we uncover the twisted case of Amber Belken.
My whole world just died right there. It's the worst feeling in the world because you totally realize no one can fix this. Nobody can bring her back.
On January 29, 2007, Mariano Rivera received a call from the district manager of EB Games asking him to check the San Pedro Street branch because it had not opened, and the branch manager, Amber Belken, had not deposited the previous day's earnings. Mariano drove to the location and saw Amber's car parked in front, yet the store was dark and locked. He told the district manager he could not get inside and assumed Amber had stepped away briefly since her car was still there. He went back to his own branch and resumed work. But at 2 p.m, he got another call asking him to return because the district manager still not able to reach anyone at the branch. When Mariano arrived the second time, the doors were unlocked and Amber's assistant Brandon Beal was behind the counter starting the day as if nothing was wrong. The sight that met Mariano was far from ordinary. Displays had been overturned, products torn open and tossed around, and the floor was littered with game discs and DVDs. The register drawer was fully open with cash lying on the counter, along with scattered rolls of coins. Mariano knew no responsible staff member would leave a store in such disorder, and Amber was known for being meticulous. He walked toward the back office with a growing sense of unease. There on the floor lay Amber motionless, a plastic bag covering her head, and no sign of breath. The air felt heavy and silent. Authorities arrived and confirmed she was gone. The signs indicated her breathing had been cut off using the bag, and the method suggested time, effort, and intent, making it deeply personal. The office safe was open, and the money inside had vanished. Records showed she had not made the morning deposit. With Mariano's help, police discovered that a large number of game discs and complete PlayStation and Xbox consoles were also missing. The value of the stolen goods and cash was estimated at $6,000, making it appear like a planned theft. Yet the details did not entirely match a simple break-in. Amber's car was still in the parking lot along with her phone. Her last text to her boyfriend Fred was at 9:08 a.m., and just 4 minutes later, the store alarm was turned off, meaning she had arrived to start her day. The front and back entrances were locked when Mariano first came, but the rear emergency exit was latched only from the outside, and the security bar that should have kept it from opening had been removed. This meant the intruder could have moved all the stolen items through the back to a waiting vehicle and left the door appearing shut. One more sign caught the eye of investigators. The cordless phone near the accounting desk was missing from its charger. This suggested Amber may have tried to call for help before being overpowered. Still, the question lingered. If the safe was already open, why end her life at all, and why in such a prolonged way? The first person police spoke to was Brandon Beal, who claimed he did not notice the chaos when he entered because he was focused on preparing the store and feared Amber might scold him for the mess, as she often did. His comments about her strict nature made investigators curious, because the disorder inside was so obvious it would take only seconds for anyone to see the place had been ransacked. Detective Robert arrived and began collecting every detail. While still in Amber's office with her body not yet removed, he noticed a performance review for Brandon. It contained only negative notes. Amber had written that he lacked focus, ignored important details, and regularly disregarded company policy, leading to repeated disagreements between them. The report was due to be sent to the regional manager on the very same day Amber lost her life. That discovery shifted the investigation entirely. Now Robert had to determine whether this was merely coincidence or the turning point in a chain of events no one saw coming. When investigators finally sat down with Brandon Beal, he gave them a story that sounded stranger than anything they had heard so far. He said his morning began in an ordinary way at home, before heading to his fiance's family to help them move a few things. By 2 p.m, he arrived at the store and found it closed, which made him uneasy because he feared he might have been scheduled for the morning shift and had failed to open the branch. When he walked in and saw the chaos, he claimed he began tidying up quickly so Amber would not blame him for the disorder.
See, trying to figure this thing out.
Got up, let my dog out, March Sports Center. Then at 9:45 I left because I had to go help my fiance's parents move a big item that goes in the kitchen.
Up to this point, his version matched what he had told the officers outside the store. But what he said next would shift the tone of the entire investigation. Brandon insisted he had no knowledge of the negative evaluation Amber had written about him, yet admitted he was aware that the cash from the previous day was always deposited the next morning. When they asked how he had not noticed that the store looked like it had been robbed, he explained that he was nervous and suspected someone from the evening shift had left it in that condition to frame him for negligence, especially since the store had no cameras. That detail changed everything. Now Brandon Beal was someone who knew exactly when the deposits were made. His relationship with Amber was far from good. More importantly, he knew the branch had no surveillance system, and he was familiar with every entrance and exit. In the minds of the investigators, the pieces seemed to fit, and Brandon Beal rose to the top of the suspect list. 2 days later, the funeral for Amber Belken took place. The service was attended by more than 600 people, and among them was Brandon Beal. In a move that stunned everyone, he approached the casket and placed inside a necklace bearing the EB Games logo. Amber's mother Lilia rushed forward and removed it before handing it to the police. To her, this was the man who had taken her daughter's life, and yet had the audacity to stand there among grieving friends and family. What no one expected was that the investigators had already secured a search warrant for his home, his car, and a sample of his DNA. The following morning, they searched everything he owned, yet found none of the missing merchandise. The DNA did not match what had been recovered from Amber. His fiancée confirmed his alibi, stating he had been with her and her family before arriving at the store. Even phone records showed his device had never been near the store before 2 o'clock that day. In a matter of moments, the prime suspect was no longer the focus. The man who had seemed to fit the puzzle perfectly was suddenly cleared, which raised an unsettling question. If it was not Brandon, then who had the knowledge, the opportunity, and the nerve to walk away unseen? With Brandon Beal ruled out, the investigation into Amber Belken's case slammed into a wall. As I mentioned before, there was no surveillance footage from the store, and apart from a single dark hair found near Amber's body. Hoping for a lead, the San Antonio police held a press conference with Amber's parents, pleading for anyone with information to come forward. They even announced a $100,000 reward, with $95,000 of it offered by EB Games. But heartbreakingly, no one stepped forward. 7 long months passed in silence until one day, a phone call broke the stillness. A man claimed he had important information about the case.
I just kind of blew it off. I did, you don't think your best friend's gonna actually want to go do something.
It was the first promising lead in months, but the detectives approached it with caution. The caller refused to give his real name, asking them to call him Joe. Despite being the one to reach out, Joe seemed hesitant to speak. Eventually, he agreed to meet face to face, and over several interviews proved that he was serious. Joe explained that shortly before January 29th, his friend Giovanni Rivera had asked him to help with a store robbery. He said he refused and did not take it seriously at the time because he never imagined his close friend would truly follow through. But everything changed when he heard about the robbery and Amber's death at EB Games. That was when Joe realized Giovanni had carried it out.
I was in shock when he told me that. I was like, wow. I was scared too because I was in a car alone with him thinking I freaked out. What's he gonna do to me?
Joe admitted he had not come forward earlier because he was terrified of Giovanni. His fear was not without reason. The next time they met, Giovanni openly confessed to ending Amber's life. Joe described being in shock as they sat alone in Giovanni's car, wondering what Giovanni might do to him next. As for why Giovanni targeted that EB Games store, Joe's answer was chillingly simple. Both of them had once worked there. Giovanni knew there were no cameras, and he knew the layout intimately. He also knew where the cash deposits were kept, and he knew Amber personally, having worked alongside her for a short time. This was indeed an inside job. Armed with this new information, detectives brought Giovanni Rivera in for questioning.
Water, Coke?
Oh, it'll do damage to my stomach right now without food.
I'm real comfortable thinking that you're responsible for this murder.
That's crazy, sir.
He denied everything, but as Joe's details began lining up, they felt certain they were on the right path. A warrant for Giovanni's DNA was obtained quickly, but the warrants for his home and car were still pending. The plan was to wait until those warrants arrived so they could confront him all at once. But before they could act, the district attorney called with crushing news. They could not win the case as it stood. There was no strong evidence and no unknown fingerprints at the scene. The detectives were stunned, yet still convinced they had the right man. Determined not to lose momentum, they went to Giovanni's home. There they found him waiting, almost as if he knew they would come. In front of his wife Veronica, he told her he understood why the officers were there, and went with them willingly. At the station, he gave a DNA sample, but refused to answer a single question. Without enough evidence, they had to let him go. The very next morning, Giovanni told his wife to pack their belongings. He took her and their young children and left town, heading straight for Laredo, Texas, near the Mexican border. It was clear he was preparing to vanish, and vanish he did. From that moment on, Giovanni Rivera disappeared entirely. In June 2008, nearly a year and a half after Amber Belken's life was taken, the San Antonio police received another call they never expected.
Something's gonna happen tonight. Something's gonna happen. Because we were in the middle of nowhere. And I didn't know he was gonna kill me. And I was thinking, how am I gonna get out of this? And I look over and he just reached over the glove compartment. And he put out the gun. And I said, please don't kill me. He said, don't worry, I'll just do what I say.
On the line was a woman from the city of Laredo who said she needed to speak to them immediately. The moment she gave her name, the detectives recognized it. She was Veronica Rivera, the wife of Giovanni Rivera. Veronica's story began years earlier when she was still in high school. Giovanni pursued her relentlessly, and although she was never truly drawn to him, she eventually gave in to his persistence. She could not have known that this decision would set her on a path that would shatter her life. Not long after they began dating, she became pregnant. Both families pressured her into marriage despite her age, and soon she and Giovanni were husband and wife. In time, they had 2 children together. While she never regretted becoming a mother, life with Giovanni was a different matter. There were constant financial struggles, but worse than that, Giovanni treated her with cruelty and control. He demanded intimacy whenever he wanted and refused to accept no as an answer. Veronica described how, if she resisted, he would force himself on her. Their small 1-bedroom apartment made the situation even more unbearable. She said he often targeted her while their children slept just feet away in the same room, gagging her and binding her wrists with tape to silence any sound. She kept the truth locked inside, convinced there was no one she could turn to. Everything shifted the night Amber's case appeared on the news. Veronica realized the EB Games store involved was the same branch where Giovanni had once worked. She even mentioned it to him and said he seemed as surprised as she was. But when police came to collect his DNA, his reaction was immediate. He told her they had to leave town for Laredo. When she asked why, he said the police believed he had ended someone's life. Her fear deepened when she asked if it was true, and he simply answered yes. She followed him to Laredo, but the weight of that confession stayed with her. One night, she gathered the courage to confront him directly and asked if he had taken Amber's life during a store robbery. Giovanni admitted it without hesitation. Veronica begged him to surrender, but he refused. When she told him their marriage was over and she would take the children, he suggested they drive somewhere to eat and talk. Instead of a restaurant, he drove her to a secluded spot, locked the doors, and pulled a gun from the dashboard. She pleaded for her life, but he ignored her, ordering her into the back seat where he assaulted her. Veronica was certain she would not survive. But when it was over, Giovanni did something even more chilling. He handed her the gun and told her she needed to end him so it would all be over. If she did not, he warned he would haunt her children and anyone she loved for the rest of their lives. Somehow she calmed him, convincing him that if both of them were gone, there would be no one to care for their children. They returned home, where he forced her to sleep beside him. The next morning, he drove her and the children to her mother's house. Once he left, she finally felt safe enough to act and made the call to police. The detectives were stunned. They now had enough to arrest Giovanni Rivera. But if he had left his family behind, there was every chance he had already crossed the border. They contacted the U.S. Marshal Service, which added Giovanni to its list of the 15 most wanted fugitives. This was not only because of the severity of the case, but also because the listing meant more funding and more reach in the hunt for him. They coordinated with Mexican authorities, who agreed to help, and within 6 weeks they found him. He had not gone far. He was staying at his cousin's home in Nuevo Laredo, just across the border. When they moved in to take him, he was playing one of the video games stolen during the EB Games robbery. There was one condition attached to his arrest. As part of the extradition agreement, The U.S. authorities had to promise not to pursue the death penalty. That mattered little in the end because prosecutors offered him a plea deal.
I'm Detective Roberts, Raymond Roberts, San Antonio Police Department.
I've had this guilt for a long time. I've been wanting to turn myself in, but I always put the needs of others before me. She recognized me, and when I was in there, I asked for the money, and I tried to explain to her, look, I'm having some problems, and she said, just take the money. And then that's when she panicked and she wanted to scream, and I just covered her mouth and just saying, please don't scream like that. And now I'm faced and I'm like saying that I can't lose everything I have gained, my family, and I've already hit the point of no return, and I just grabbed my bag and I just told her, just be quiet. And when she stopped moving, I just heard her gurgling, and I didn't hear her screaming. I just stopped and I said, you know what? Okay, and I turned her around and I untied her. I said, are you okay? And she wasn't breathing. And I heard her gasp, but she didn't respond anymore. And that's when I left. I had already had the money, and I put the stuff that I wanted to pick up so I can sell. And I left out the back door.
When detectives sat across from Giovanni after his capture and asked about Amber, he gave a partial confession. He claimed he only wanted money after losing his job. At first he said Amber cooperated, but when she tried to call for help, he attacked her and placed the bag over her head. He called it an accident, saying that when she stopped responding, he panicked and fled. Giovanni accepted the plea and admitted guilt to ending Amber's life, as well as 2 counts of assault against Veronica. In the spring of 2010, he was sentenced to life in prison. Because the charges were reduced, he was given the possibility of parole after 30 years. As of this recording, Giovanni Rivera remains behind bars, but could be eligible for release as early as August 2038. Amber Belken was the only daughter of Randy and Lilia, the quiet center of their world, and the reason they believed the future could only hold good things. Amber was 25 years old, and already she had built a career that most people twice her age were still chasing. As manager of the EB Games store, she had turned it into more than a place of sales. It was a place of energy and care. Her staff respected her. Her customers knew her by name. But the real pulse of her heart was far from the cash registers and game displays. It was in every stray she stopped to save, in every animal she fed and sheltered, in the small dog she named Buddy after finding him abandoned and alone by the roadside. Her dream was clear: save enough, go back to school, become a veterinarian, devote her life to those who had no voice. It was a dream her parents shared with her. They knew she would make it happen. They had seen her determination. They had seen her fight for what she loved. But one morning, the future stopped. The store she had poured herself into, the place she had led with pride, it became the place where her story ended. In the space of a few minutes, everything she was and everything she could have been was gone. The plans, the laughter, the animals she had yet to rescue. For her parents, there would be no more morning calls from their daughter. No more evenings spent talking about the life she was building. Only silence where her voice used to be. And that is the cruelest truth of all. A life with so much promise can be taken in an instant. And the world will never know just how far Amber Belken could have gone. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime documentaries. See you in the next video.